Good morning, and welcome to WTHE Theory News. I'm your host, Kennedy Adams. There will be quite a few guests on our show today. Theorist Courtney, opposing theorist Kendall, and our guest commentator, Eddie. Without any further ado, let's bring out our first guest, Kendall. How are you? All right. So, today everyone keeps talking about this topic, groupthink. What is your take on the whole idea?
To be honest, I don't think it's great. To be quite frank, I kind of think it's a horrible idea, actually.
Oh, really? Why do you think it's just so bad?
When you think of groupthink, what do you think of? People assume it just means a group of people that think the same. But to be honest, it's really more than that.
Oh, really? Please explain to the audience what you mean by that.
Groupthink creates stress when a highly cohesive group makes poor decisions. Everyone think it's so great and think it's the same, but what if everyone around you said, "Hey, let's go jump off a cliff"? Are you going to do it? People need to understand that groupthink is actually like negative in a way.
All right. So can you tell us why it is so negative?
Of course I can, Kennedy. Groupthink limits discussion, does not examine the ramifications to a preferred solution.
Okay.
The group ignores the minority opinion. They never look for an expert's opinion on the matter.
All right.
The group only looks at information that supports their ideas, and they don't think of the possible outcomes of failure.
Okay. So what it sounds like to me is that you think this theory overall is not really that great, and that it kind of promotes conformity in a sense that people who are involved only see an outcome that's going to benefit them rather than seeing the other options that might even involve failure?
Yes. Nobody will ever be like right all the time.
Exactly.
But you have to be able to work with other people who have different views in order to fully understand the concept.
Okay. Thank you, Kendall, for your time. Up next, we have Courtney, who was actually part of the team who developed groupthink. Stay tuned. Welcome back to WTHE Theory News. I'm your host, Kennedy Adams. We just heard from opposing theorist Kendall on why he's not a fan of groupthink. Now let's bring out our professional, Courtney, who is for groupthink.
Nice to be here. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, no problem.
How are you?
Doing great. How are you?
I'm absolutely fantastic.
All right. So there's this big popular thing in the media right now called groupthink, which I'm pretty sure you're aware of.
Oh, absolutely.
So can you actually tell the audience what the whole concept's really about?
Of course I can. You know, groupthink is about one big cohesive group that shares a mutual interest.
All right, awesome. So what are the benefits of this whole topic of groupthink?
There are so many positive benefits to groupthink, you know, such as encouraging everyone to express their own reservations, like their own ideas, like during the group process.
Okay.
You know, that way the leader doesn't state just their specific preference, but then they rather listen to everyone's opinions.
Okay.
You know, we separate into subgroups to create our own ideas, and we discuss what's going on with others outside the group so we get fresh ideas outside. And then we also assign someone to play the devil's advocate. So that means that somebody plays on both sides so we can hear both sides of the situation.
All right.
And then we hold another meeting to reconsider certain ideas that have not been in favor prior.
Wow. With all that being said, because it seems so great, why do you think some people are just so skeptical about this idea?
You know, I think that many people assume that if you believe in groupthink, you believe in conformity, but really, and you lose your sense of individuality.
Okay.
But I don't really think so. I worked with two professionals, Charles Pavitt and Laura Brumel, who wrote a book on groupthink, and we discussed the effects of group size.
So with all that being said, can you elaborate a little more for the audience?
Yeah, absolutely. So of course, you know, when people think of groupthink, sometimes they think that if everyone in the group believed in something such as, you know, jumping off a cliff or something like that, everyone would do it, but in reality, that's not really the case.
Okay.
You know, when you use groupthink, you actually use your critical thinking skills. We believe that in cohesion, which means that the group has a mutual interest and belief that their goals can be met within the group.
Okay.
So really, this just means that group members do not need to have similar attitudes, but instead, the members of the group exhibit a degree of interdependence, which means they rely on one another to achieve a mutually desired goal.
Okay.
And based on the size of the group determines how receptive the members are to the information.
Well, that does make sense, because I feel like if you have a bigger group, it might be a little harder to contain them.
Well, right, if you have a bigger group, not everybody's ideas are gonna be heard, so it's harder. So some people just won't say and they'll just go with what the group says.
Gotcha. Well, thank you, Courtney, for your time.
Absolutely.
It was great hearing your side of why groupthink is actually a positive. Next up, we're going to have our guest speaker, Eddie, so stay tuned. Welcome back to WTHE Theory News. I'm your host, Kennedy Adams. So far, we've heard from opposing theorist Kendall on his views against groupthink, and, of course, from Courtney on her views for groupthink. Now let's bring out our special guest, Eddie. I'm great. So, basically what I want to know is that throughout the show we've been talking about the pros and cons of groupthink. What's your take on this whole concept right now?
Well, Kenny, I'm actually an expert on network theory.
Network theories, what is that?
A network theory is a social structure created by communication amongst individuals and groups.
Okay.
And as people communicate with one another, links are created, and these links represent the lines of communication within the organization.
So this seems to link to groupthink, but can you explain more in depth of how it links?
Sure, no problem. Groupthink is essentially a group of people who share mutual interests.
Okay,
A group must share cohesion in order to study any group dealing with interaction.
makes sense.
In order to communicate within a group, you must communicate using network links. For example, network theory is composed of 4 different types of networks, that being group, personal, formal, and emergent.
Okay,
But the one that relates to this topic is group networks. For example, social media has created network communication channels that facilitate interactions and allow information to proliferate within professional academic communities.
all right. So what exactly is group network and why does it relate to groupthink?
Well, a group network is basically the people who you are communicating with the most with. For example, say you work for a company and you talk to a few people and you become friends with them.
Okay,
And you start to communicate with one another over social media and over the phone.
all right.
Those people then become your group network in the sense that you work for a large corporation. And based on the people who associate with one another, then break off into subgroups. This relates to groupthink because you surround yourself with people who are similar to yourself. As a result, you will tend to conform or think that because you have similar attitude, think the same.
Well, that does make sense. So what I'm getting at is that you think it's okay to use groupthink, am I right?
Yeah, that's correct. I think that the theory of groupthink is actually very useful and can be linked to other theories in communication, such as my theory of networking.
All right, so I got a question. Do you think there are any negative effects of groupthink?
Of course, with any theory that you create, there will always be positive and negative effects.
Okay.
You have to look at both sides and determine the purpose of the theory is working. What I mean by that is that people often think groupthink means you have to conform to an idea and you're going to be brainwashed. That's obviously not true. Yes, you might conform to an idea that you might not have agreed with at first, but it's more about communicating with others in your group to come up with a solution that will benefit everyone.
Okay.
Just as I stated before, groupthink is very similar to networking because of the fact that you must work with other people to come to a final decision on a matter.
Well, thank you so much for your time, Eddie. I really appreciate hearing an outside source on the topic at hand. So next week, stay tuned for all of our new topics right after this commercial break.